Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I am honored to have first-time guest of the show, Shawn the Filipino Flash Suser, to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Luke?
It's going great. It's going great. First off, great nickname. You told me that your dad gave that to you when you were 10 years old. Did you ever think you'd use it as like a fight nickname, or is that your thought the whole way through once you had such a great nickname?
I mean, from when we first decided I was going to have an amateur fight, I was like, okay, I'll be the Filipino Flash, but they didn't actually announce it as my nickname until like my third fight.
Okay.
Yeah, we always knew it was going to be something. It was actually from Flash Award in boxing. He was a Filipino guy.
Okay.
And then you have Nonito Donaire, who's the Filipino Flash, but I'm the only one in MMA as far as I know. Got to let my dog in.
Okay.
Crazy. I got two dogs. Oh, it's
That's exciting.
Nowhere.
That's exciting that it relates to boxing, and obviously your dad gave you the nickname. I'm super excited because I got to see you live in action in your second pro fight. You're undefeated as an MMA pro. You're also undefeated in your amateur career. You had 4 stoppage wins in your amateur, 3 submission wins in your pro. So if you're keeping track at home watching this, all 7 of your MMA fights have been by stoppage. So congratulations to you on that. Very, very, very impressive. But I got to witness, as being part of the commentary team for 247 Fighting Championships, your second pro win live, which was just super exciting. I didn't get the chance to get you on then, so I apologize. But let's jump into now. You are just a couple weeks away, September 9th. You're going to be flying out to Colorado. You're going to be fighting for LFA 141 is their card at Vail, Colorado. Super, super exciting. And obviously, as an undefeated pro, that's pretty exciting. What was it like getting on LFA? This is your first fight for LFA. You've had 1 pro fight in 3 different promotions. So what was it like jumping to LFA? And how much are you kind of looking forward to fighting on that known card or known promotion?
Well, LFA has been the promotion outside of, one championship that I've always wanted to fight on, because at one of the Shogun events, Ed Soares and Brian Ortega were cage side there. And I was just walking around the, cage, walking out with my teammates. And Brian was like, hey, that's a nice shirt you got there. And I really clicked with him and Ed really a lot. And Lyoto Machida is one of my favorite fighters. So I love Ed Soares. I knew that was his manager. So I connected with them really well, and I've always wanted to fight for LFA. So I'm really excited to showcase on that platform. And I signed with a new management, Iridium Sports Agency back in May. And then I told him that's where I want to fight if we can't get me to 1 championship right away. And within a month and a half, he got me on it. It's a very good matchup on paper, and I just hope I go out there and dominate if possible. But I'm ready for a hard scrap. They might be finishes, but I'm working on the mental side every day to just make sure I'm ready for whatever happens, because you can't just expect finishes. I don't expect to finish these guys quickly. It's just if they leave an opening, I'll capitalize. So
I think that's, as far as the sport mental prep side, that's a very good mindset to have. I'm going way back to Shane Carwin in the heavyweight division, so completely not bantamweight, but it worked really well for him to knock everybody out until it didn't, and then he lost. Because as great as it is to win by submission, win by finish, you're taking what the opponent gives you. And so I think that's a great attitude to have. Being able to win a decision is also very, very important in the sport of MMA, and I'm thrilled that you're thinking of that. Can I ask you why ONE FC is your sort of absolute goal? Is it because of the Asian influence and the fact that it spends a lot of time over in the Philippines and those areas that are more connected to you? Or is there another reason why ONE FC is kind of your long-term goal?
There's a multitude of reasonings, and I can dive into depth in those. I'm not opposed to the UFC. If we get to, say, the 5-0 mark, we think I could go either Contender Series or ONE FC. But when I first started training, Ong La Ensong, you know him?
I actually don't right off the top of my head, but sure.
He was a dual 2-weight world champion for ONE. Okay. And when I saw him, when he won the title in his hometown and confetti was raining, from the ceilings, and he was crying in the cage, and just an accumulation of years of work. I saw, him achieve that. And I was like, I want that to be me. And also, given like I'm half white, but I look like I'm full Filipino Flash. So I feel like to make the most out of my career, I would be able to capitalize on that in one championship. And I feel like I'd be taken better care of there. I know it's a longer flight, but I'd like to get paid to travel to those parts of the world. So I feel like, and if, I want to do UFC and I go to one championship first, then I can establish a career over there and then come to UFC later. But I'd like to get to one championship. That's just my goal. I think that if you're going to make the most out of a sport, then that's where I'm going to be able to do it. But we'll see.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry for not knowing the champion, particularly since he's a 2-8. I need to watch more of one. I've basically only watched the UFC connection to one when Ben Askren, of course, that was before, and that whole trade and everything with Mighty Mouse over there. So I've been kind of one-dimensional, so I need to broaden more into what ONE FC. I've also recently gotten into PFL and kind of liking what they offer, which is also exciting. I also think, I've said this on other shows, I think it's important that the UFC does not have to be the end goal for every MMA fighter. I know they think they are, but there was a time where Pride, which of course was based in Asia, was really the end goal for a lot of people. I mean, there were times where they had a much better caliber of fighter than the UFC. So I think it's great that you have many reasons. You're very thoughtful. You have many reasons for wanting that to be your goal. And I think that's wonderful. I don't think we should have a myopic viewpoint that everybody has to be a success by going to the UFC. I think we've seen that when Mighty Mouse went over to ONE and picked up at least 1 or 2 losses. Competition is very fierce in ONE FC, particularly at the lighter weights. And of course, you're 135. It seems like that would work perfectly. You mentioned as far as feeling connected to your Filipino roots. Do you speak the native language that you could use on the mic if you were fighting at ONE FC?
So I was possibly, so my mom didn't have the best upbringing there.
Okay.
Left her when she was 9 to come here, and left her with an abusive aunt and uncle. So she kind of dissociated with the Philippines, but still, kind of brought parts of the ethnic background to us. But because of that, she didn't really teach us how to speak it.
Sure.
Teaches my niece and nephew because she lives with them, which I'm like, oh, you could have taught me. But I was like, maybe I'll bring my nephew with me and he can be my translator or something like that. But yeah, so because she associates herself as American, even though she's 100% Filipino.
Sure.
But obviously, we she'd make Filipino food for our birthday. When I get married, she wants me to wear the traditional Filipino outfit, stuff like that, to bring bits and pieces of the culture, but really embraced in the American style of living. But I mean, that's why I want to fight there, so I can really get to those roots.
Sure.
And because the flights were always expensive, so we never really made the trip out there, even though it's cheap. Kind of like going to Thailand, it's really expensive to fly, but once you get there, everything's cheap. So I mean, I would like a paid vacation to go hang out in the Philippines, and especially off of wind. And Tokyo has been my #1 destination for travel. And if I could fight in Tokyo and then take a week and go on vacation there, that's also why I want to go over those Asia countries. I've been to a lot of Europe,
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, you've sold me. If I was in charge of ONE FC, I'd have you fighting over there because it sounds very exciting. To getting back, I believe at one point, and I believe you still are training at Ground Control Gym. How has it been going, progressing from amateur to pro, training at a gym in Maryland? So how's that gym working for you? And how's it going with your training partners? Just all the regular getting ready for a fight as you progress. I believe Vince Mosca still works with you, and I believe you still train with them. I've had him on the show several times. I've known him for about 10 years. So how's that whole process? How'd you find the gym? What's the whole, I believe you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, at least. No?
3 stripe. I think I'll get my belt this year.
Oh, so you're brown now?
3-stripe brown belt. Yeah.
So you were very progressed in jujitsu before you got into MMA. So kind of connect the dots for me, since this is the first time on the show. I'm kind of curious about your background prior to MMA.
So I used to watch a lot of WWE. I'm actually named after Shawn Michaels, so my middle name's Michael. I walk out to I mix like his song in my walkout song, and then I also have like Strangled. But we watch wrestling, my friends and I, and then we go in my backyard and wrestle on the trampoline. We were basically doing jujitsu without knowing what jujitsu was. We were trying to put each other in sleeper holds, and once I watched a little bit of UFC, it would turn into arm bars and stuff like that. But then I got bored of WWE, started watching UFC around when Chuck got knocked out by Rampage.
Oh, okay.
And then I was about in the 5th grade. And then when I was in the 8th summer going into 8th grade, I started training. My dad took me to the free trial. I loved it. I knew like a couple of submissions, said, sign me up. Then started competing in jiu-jitsu like 6 months in. And then freshman year of high school, started wrestling. And my dad was always under the impression that we were going to wait till I was in like 23 to go pro. So when I turned 18, I took a gap year in between high school and college to just work and train and mature before going to college. And he was like, how about you have an amateur fight? And that amateur fight actually isn't on my Tapology. So I was actually 5-0 as an amateur. I trained my ass off and then went in there and choked the guy unconscious in 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. Then, did some traveling and came back, started college. So adjusted to that. Then I, had another fight. I won that. And then had another one, won an amateur title, won that. Then, got a little burnt out. So I took a little bit of a break and then refound the fire, and then won another fight. And then it was getting hard to make 25 at that point. So then I moved up to 35, felt really good. I wasn't training just to lose weight. I was training to enjoy training. And then I moved up to 35 and submitted that guy with an arm bar. His arm would have broke if the ref didn't stop it. And then I went to Towson, and my dad, right before he signed the lease for my apartment at Towson, he said, you sure that you ain't going to go pro in MMA, are you? Yet? He's like, you're going to graduate college first, right? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to go pro yet. And then literally like a month into Towson, I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to fight on this local show. I got offered an opponent, and he was like, oh, you mother, So then I went to Towson for a year. So I finished out what was that? So I got my associates, and then I was a year into Towson. So that would have been like my junior year or whatnot. Yeah. And then I decided to forego school to take a break so I could focus on fighting, because I figured I'm on Dean's List. I have 3 semesters left. So if I, want to finish, I can go back and finish my 3 semesters. So then I decided to make my pro debut, and I was at ground control at that point because it was really close to my college. And started training there and training with guys like Tucker Lutz and Skylar Shudo, Jesse Stern. Skylar's fought on Bellator. Tucker's currently in the UFC. Jesse's fought on PFL. So I knew I had already trained with them before, but I knew that since it was on a regular basis when I was at my old gym, I was like, you can't afford to have a bad day with these guys. like you come into the room, you're going to have to like suck it up and just, force yourself to have a good practice, because you can't be getting beat up on them every day. So then, made my pro debut in November 2019, and then was supposed to have won that, and then was supposed to have a second fight, and then the world shut down.
COVID. I figured that was the gap. I saw on I was like, oh, anybody trying to keep fighting during COVID, that was really tough. And then you had the Patton fight, the Justin General Patton fight in, I believe, 21. That would have been August of last year.
Yeah. So it was almost like 18, I want to say, in between fights or something like that. And no, like, crap talk to my manager or old manager or whatnot, but like I was trying to get fights, and they, I wasn't really getting fights. So that's why there was also the delay. I also got injured. Like I was supposed to fight on CFFC in September of 20 and got injured for like the first, like I've been good with injuries, but got injured for the first time and had to pull out of that fight. And then, Then once I was recovered, I was having a hard time finding fights. And then on the Facebook forum, they were like looking for an opponent for this guy. And I was like, oh, okay, put me in, coach. Sorry, I felt my dog needed to come out. Yeah, that's how I ended up with Patton. I'm gonna move downstairs because
Sure.
yeah, sorry, it's got to
The
be
dog
done.
just wants to be in the interview. I understand the
She's
situation.
an alarm dog. My girlfriend just got home from training. She's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
and a
very nice.
black belt in taekwondo.
Oh, that's a great. Does your girlfriend have interest in MMA, or is she keeping jujitsu and taekwondo kind of separate?
Well, she has interest in turning her gym into a MMA gym. I teach kids jujitsu at her MMA gym.
Oh, great.
Or her martial arts gym. So we're bringing that in, and then we're probably going to turn into a wrestling club too. So like my rule of thumb is they'll do jujitsu during not wrestling season, and then when wrestling season hits, turn it into a wrestling club. And then do the season, because there's no better breeding ground for competitors than wrestling. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, that got a little off topic. So yeah, the layoff was an injury and COVID, and then not really being able to find fights.
And
it was
unfortunately, you saw the Facebook forum where I think it's called Pits MMA matching, where
one of
247,
those. Yeah.
yeah, where 247 put it out there. What was your experience like doing the 247 fight versus Justin Patton? Obviously, you had a nice armbar win. What was it like for you?
I thought that what's the name of the guy who runs it again? Ryan
Middleton. Yeah.
I thought that he's doing a very damn good job of keeping it professional and well organized. It wasn't his fault the commission came late to weigh-ins.
Yeah.
But besides that, he's doing a really good thing. He's hustling, and I thought it was a well-run show. I know some people will complain about the PA commission, but it is. Wish I could have got paid a little bit more, but we're fighting for dimes towards dollars. So you start low, fight global. So I'm not expecting to make a ton of money right now, but.
Well, and obviously in your career, I think you're being smart and intelligent with the decisions you make, other than maybe your dad not loving you dropping out of college for it. But
once he was because my old coach, every time I came to practice, he's like, why are you going to college, boy? He's like, you have the potential to be in UFC or Bellator. I don't tell that to hardly any of my fighters. He's like, why are you in college? You should be doing this full time. So that kind of planted the seed. I was like, man, he's crazy. I have to follow what society has molded. Go to college, and whatnot. And then my dad was kind of for it because he saw I don't miss practices. So he'll never take credit for my success, even though he's the one who took me to a lot of the practices before I could drive, and afforded me to go to wrestling camps and stuff like that. He'll always say, I'm not the one who goes to practices, he does. So yeah, my old coach, Mike Moses, great guy. He was always trying to push me to quit college and pursue MMA. So then that's why my dad mentioned, am I going to go pro? So when I decided to drop out, I needed to make sure I did at least a year there. So if I ever go back, it's only 3 semesters.
Sure.
Yeah. So my dad was all for it. He's been to every one of my fights. He was in the corner of every amateur fight. Because my dad comes from like karate and kickboxing background, did some jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and has been studying fighting forever. So he has a very good mind for it. And then my mom's freaking crazy. She's this short little fireball who will scream at the top of her lungs during my fights. So I'm glad
you have both of your parents' support. Speaking of your parents, in a cage wrestling, sometimes people talk about it. Can you hear your mom and dad, even though they're in the crowd mixed in, or are you more dialed into your coaches? I know sometimes people have 1 or 2 people they can hear, and other than that, they can't really hear the crowd.
Maybe I don't remember hearing it during the fight. I don't even remember what they tell me in the corner, but if I watch the video, I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember him telling me that. So I don't remember doing half the shit I do in the fight. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. That was cool. It's kind of like, I want to say I transform into the Filipino Flash when I get into there. I'm on not autopilot, but it's a different me in there. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, I think in sports psychology, they call that the flow state, which is fancy speak for basically that you're allowing your skill, your training, and your instincts and your reactions to happen without, like, if you're in training and the coaches are asking you to train a certain move, whether it's wrestling and you're hitting a certain type of takedown, whether it's jujitsu and you're working a certain chain or a certain type of submission plan, that's all good. That's good for the mind. But where flow state comes in is when you're not planning any of it. You're just going with what your instincts and your reaction is allowing you to do, which also sounds like your mindset when it comes to submissions, because you just find them. When they're there, you take them. And it's great that you've been able to finish all of your opponents at the pro level with submissions. But like you said earlier in the interview, you just take what's there. So it also is kind of cool that you're able to process what's being said at the time, even if you don't remember it later, which is pretty typical of a high adrenaline situation. So, but yeah, pretty great stuff as far as all that goes. What are you mentioned traveling, you mentioned wanting to obviously take in the Asian world and traveling. Any thoughts about elevation in Colorado? I've been to Colorado a couple times. I've had some elevation sickness because I climbed a 14,000 foot mountain the day after I got to Colorado, which is a great idea. Highly recommend everyone do that just so you can experience elevation sickness. But what are your plans with fighting in Vail, and kind of how are you going to train for elevation? Because obviously that's an aspect of the fight.
So this will be my third time out there. I have connections with Elevation Fight Team. So I went out there for the last camp for a week. I actually acclimate to the altitude pretty quickly, which I guess says a thing or two about my base cardio.
Sure.
Second day I was there, both times was sparring day. Last time I was there, it was 8 5-minute rounds, and I did all 8. I didn't know that I could take a round off. So and I felt pretty good. So I'm going out on the 28th of August. I'm cornering my boy Keon Lomax on Stellar Fights on the 27th. And then Sunday morning, the 28th, I fly to Denver, get a full week out there, like Monday and Tuesday of fight week. And then I'll go to Vail. My girlfriend and coaches are coming in. So then we'll drive over to Vail, and then it's a little bit higher there, maybe like I think 7,000 feet, and Denver's mile high. So it's a little bit more, significant. But I mean, I don't really think like lung wise it's harder. I think your body has to push harder with the altitude. Like you have to produce more blood cells, so you're more lactic acid buildup. Like your body just has to drive the engine harder. It's more like you're more redlining than you are coasting or whatnot. I don't know how to describe it. That's what altitude feels for me. You have less oxygen, so your body has to push harder.
Yeah, that's a great description.
Early to acclimate, but I should be okay.
Well, that also goes to the whole mindset. I've really enjoyed getting you on the show. Thanks for talking about everything. And I've enjoyed the fact that you plan things out, you think things through, going out over a week early, because this fight's September 9th. It's great. You're giving yourself time. It also shows, I always try to point this out on these shows, that the fight community is very supportive of other fighters. You're spending time with friends, time with people that are connected into MMA, or, and that's a big deal. We know, at one point, Forrest Griffin, before, it's very famous now, but at one point, Forrest Griffin, before Ultimate Fighter 1, was sleeping on his coach's, in his coach's basement. There's a lot of connections that come through fighting. It's always exciting when I can get somebody, you're obviously undefeated as an amateur and a pro, and just a great talent, got a great future, got a great head on your shoulders, family support. It's been great getting to know you. I hope to follow you all the way through to the top of ONE FC. And once you're maybe a double champ there, maybe you'll consider UFC. But like what you said, ONE FC has a lot to offer. And I think it'll be very exciting for you to kind of see what that will be. But one fight at a time. Super pumped for you for LFA 141. Let's give a quick rundown if you have any sponsors or things like that, because let's end on that, just so if you have any obligations, you can throw them out there now.
So the big thing I'm doing for this is I also run a mental health page called Genuine Smiles on Instagram, and this fight is dedicated to mental health awareness. But what I'm doing that I don't think anybody else in maybe the world is doing, at least the fight community, is all of my shirts. My sponsor, Three Beautiful Creations, is covering all my shirts, and they're going to have Genuine Smiles logo on the front, and then on the back it's going to be a list of all my personal sponsors. For one, all the proceeds from so if we have 100 and say sell them for $30, all the proceeds from this are going to for every $1,000 give one person 3 months of therapy through the betterhelp.com website, so they can get virtual therapy, because I can just gift them it. And then I'm going to be, through my management, he's awesome, Lance Spalda. Iridium, we also have like Brandon Moreno and stuff like that. We're taking 5 of the shirts, and it's going to be signed by UFC fighters, and we're going to auction off all 5 of those to further go towards the cause. So I'm turning Genuine Smiles into a nonprofit. And then we're going to use all the proceeds that we possibly can from these shirts in the auction to give people therapy, because there's a lot of people that aren't able to access it. So, they're going to fill out a form, give a little bit of their background, and then I'll pick people at random, hopefully, raise enough to give all the people therapy. But that's what I'm trying to do, a big change in the stigmatism of mental health, and then actually help people. Because a lot of people talk about wanting to help, but don't do anything. And then my friend, for getting me all these damn sponsors, she's working her ass off. She's gotten me. She just hustles and bustles, and she's working on getting the nonprofit started, and then also acquiring me the sponsors, so I can just focus on what I have to do.
Well, I didn't expect that to be such a profound sponsor list. Obviously, congratulations to you and everybody helping with you moving into 401(c) status with the nonprofit. So that's pretty exciting. Genuine Smiles, let's say that out there. And I'm thrilled to hear all the other sponsors and support you have. Sounds like you have a very, like you said, deep heart for not only helping people understand the need for counseling if it's necessary, but also, like you pointed out, actually giving them direct access to it, which is just really kind of you and very heartfelt. So that's incredible. And I'm just blown away to have you on the show. I hope to follow you for a very long time. You didn't know this, but I'm a professional mental health counselor, and I work with combat vets through the VA. That's my full-time job. That's all I do is counsel combat vets. So shout out to all the combat vets and really all the veterans and anybody that needs mental health counseling. So it's thrilling that you are taking a segment of the population that you'll be able to reach through your sports influence that also needs therapy and help and support. So from one person who's a big fan and supporter of good mental health to another, it's been an honor to have you on the show. And thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule. Let's plan on having you back on. Maybe, as soon as we know what happens in Vail, I'd love to have you back on the show to kind of talk about all those things. So thanks so much for coming on.
4-0 happens in Vail, Colorado.
Well, you know what? Tell you what, when 4-0 happens in Vail, Colorado, let's do a little interview while I'm assuming it's pretty out there. Let's do a little interview while you're outside, up in the mountains, some pretty trees. It'll be great.
Sounds good to me.
All right, pal. Go get them. You've been listening to the Filipino Flash. Take care.
Thank you.
You got it.